This is the Santa Clara County Coordinated Entry System, an introductory webinar. For the training agenda, the role of coordinated entry in the COC, the core elements of assessment, prioritization, and referral, and stakeholder roles and responsibilities, the providers, CES lead agency, the COC, and participants. Throughout the training, we'll be pointing out relevant policies and implementing tools posted on the COC website. The role of the coordinated entry in the COC. What does coordinated entry do? It supports access to the entire portfolio of COC resources, HUD and county funded, permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, and transitional housing, no matter where or how people present. It provides a single centralized point of access to emergency shelter beds, offers immediate housing problem-solving support, and allows the COC to make consistent decisions from available information to efficiently and effectively connect people to interventions that will rapidly end their homelessness. It prioritizes people who are most in need of assistance for supportive housing resources, and also provides information about service needs and gaps that help the COC strategically allocate current resources and identify the need for additional resources. What does a coordinated entry not do? It does not guarantee access to housing. It does not place people on waiting lists for Section 8 housing, low-income affordable housing complexes, or private housing complexes. It does not increase the supply of housing in Santa Clara County. And it does not guarantee eligibility for housing programs. Additional paperwork will be needed if a household is matched to a participating program. Coordinated entry on its own cannot address the significant lack in affordable housing in Santa Clara County or the limited capacity in programs responding to homelessness. As a result, people who complete the coordinated entry process may still face long wait lines for housing, and many might not be matched with housing through this process. We hope that the data that comes out of the process will help us advocate for more funding for housing and services for people who are homeless. Our community vision. Our community vision for coordinated assessment is that we have a fully engaged coordinated assessment system with standardized assessment and all transitional housing, permanent supportive housing, and rapid rehousing placements made through the system. The coordinated assessment will encompass all populations and subpopulations within the COC's geographic area and prioritize and place people effectively and efficiently, quickly matching people to the housing type and services that are most likely to get them permanently housed. Let's take a look at the brief history of the CES. In November of 2011, we had the Housing 1000 Care Coordination Project, the CCP, launched. Then in mid-2014, the Coordinated Assessment Work Group formed to plan the system launch. In November of 2015, access points began using the Vulnerability Index Service Prioritization Decision Assistance Tool, or the VI-SPDAT. In January of 2016, the first referrals were made from the community queue, and by mid-2018, transitional housing referrals began. And then in fall of 2021, we have the Here For You call center that was launched. The goals of the coordinated entry: to lower barriers and streamline access to crisis resources and housing so that people move from homelessness into permanent housing as quickly as possible, to identify creative solutions, unexplored options, and resources through housing problem solving, provide clear communication about what housing and services are available, and standardize assessment so that the access and prioritization are the same for all households, and to match households to resources that are the best fit for their situations. Prioritize households with the highest presenting needs for supportive housing. The core elements of coordinated assessment. access, assessment, prioritization, and referral. The Coordinated Entry System, CES, at a glance. The Here For You call center provides crisis response services through housing problem solving and centralized referral to emergency shelter. Established access points use a standardized assessment process to gather information on people's needs and preferences and the barriers they face to regaining housing. Once the assessment has identified the most vulnerable people with the highest needs, the COC follows established policies and procedures to prioritize households for referral to appropriate and available housing and supportive services resources. This is a graphic showing how it works. On the left, we have the crisis response and the Here For You call center. They can help with creating housing solutions and direct people to possible access points. We have the shelters, outreach, and services, all contributing to the standard assessment of the VI-SPDAT that's put into HMIS. Those who are identified to have high acuity are referred to permanent supportive housing. Those with moderate acuity are referred to rapid rehousing or transitional housing. Recognizing that clients' choice is a central concern around transitional housing placements, and that some households, for example, DV survivors or persons in recovery, may prefer transitional programs, while others may prefer rapid rehousing. Individuals will be asked specific questions relating to interest in specific programs. For example, would you be interested in a transitional housing program, or would you prefer sober housing? And their preferences will be integrated into the referral process. Those who are assessed to be low acuity most likely will be able to resolve their homelessness without a housing intervention. Since Santa Clara County has limited housing capacity, housing interventions will be prioritized for those who most need it. Individuals and households with low acuity will be referred to prevention and diversion services, which could include deposit assistance from an emergency assistance network provider, making sure that they are connected to public benefits, and referring to other services in the community. The core element of crisis response. Why? To provide centralized referral to emergency shelter beds and engage people in housing problem solving to identify creative solutions, unexplored options, and resources to quickly return to housing. The core element of access. To ensure that all people have equal access to all supportive housing resources in the COC. There's no wrong door. We have 50+ access point agencies, including housing providers, the Emergency Assistance Network, shelters, the Domestic Violence Advocacy Consortium, benefits offices, street outreach, Valley homeless healthcare programs, school sites, etc. We also have a subpopulation for specific access points. That's to provide culturally responsive services. There are several specialized service providers who provide access to the CES, including Bill Wilson Center for Youth and Young Adults, Asian Americans for Community Involvement for Survivors of Domestic Violence, Community Solutions for Survivors of Domestic Violence, Sexual Assault, and Human Trafficking, and Maitri for Survivors of Domestic Violence, Next Door for Survivors of Domestic Violence, and YWCA for Survivors of Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault. For domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking pre-screening tool. We use this prior to initiating the VI-SPDAT to identify the 3 most common forms and intersections of gender-based violence, to protect the privacy and confidentiality of survivors, to ensure individuals are connected to all the services for which they're eligible. Prior to initiating the VI-SPDAT, access points that are not victim service providers will screen all incoming households to determine whether they are DV survivors at risk of harm by using the DV screening tool. It's available on the Office of Supportive Housing website. The purpose of this tool is not to establish that an individual is or has been a victim of domestic violence, sexual assault, or human trafficking, but rather to identify that they may be or may have been victim survivors of these incidents, and then connect them with the confidential advocate or attorney who can provide a thorough assessment and comprehensive support. If a household indicates that they are DV survivors at risk of harm, the assessor must offer them the choice of either 1, an immediate warm handoff to a victim service provider for services, including safety planning and the VI-SPDAT, or 2, continuing to receive the VI-SPDAT from the non-victim service provider who will enter the household's information into the community queue in HMIS anonymously, or 3, continuing to receive the VI-SPDAT from the non-victim service provider who will enter the household into the community queue in HMIS. If a DV survivor is already in the community queue because they have undergone a family VI-SPDAT with their abuser, the survivor should be given the option to be reassessed without the abuser. Also, under the core element of assessment, it's to evaluate vulnerability and barriers to housing and provide information to determine the best fit housing program. We use the Vulnerability Index Service Prioritization Decision Assistance Tool, or the VI-SPDAT for short. It's an assessment based on self-reported information with versions tailored to families, single adults, youth, and justice discharge. This is administered only by trained assessors. Assessment is the process of gathering information about a person presenting through the supportive housing system. Assessment includes documenting information about the barriers that persons face to being rapidly housed and any characteristics that might make him or her more vulnerable while homeless. Assessment is critical to the COC's overall coordinated entry process because assessment determines how people are prioritized and referred to housing and supportive services projects by evaluating their vulnerability and barriers to housing and provide information to support accurate referrals. There's different VI-SPDAT versions. There's the VI-SPDAT for single adults. We use this version for adults age 25 and older with no children in the household. There's the VI-SPDAT for families. We use this version for households with at least one child under the age of 18. The TAY, or Transition Age Youth VI-SPDAT. Use this version for transition age youth, age 18 to 24, and unaccompanied minors. The JD VI-SPDAT. Use this version for households in custody and for justice discharge. Which VI-SPDAT should I administer? Well, here's a decision tree to help you make that decision. First, you'll ask, are they in custody? If yes, utilize the JD VI-SPDAT. If no, you ask, is there a child, for instance, a person under age 18 in the household? If yes, they would use the VI-SPDAT for families. If no, assess each household member regardless of relationship. If they're adults age 25 plus, use the VI-SPDAT for single adults. If they're young adults age 18 to 24, you would use the TAY VI-SPDAT. Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS. We use this to track intakes and assessments, to streamline referrals, coordinate case management, track client outcomes, and inform program and system design and policy decisions while upholding rigorous data privacy standards. We use Clarity Human Services by BitFocus Incorporated. Organizations that provide services to persons experiencing or at risk of homelessness utilize the HMIS. Here's an example showing how many households were assessed from November 15th, 2015, when we initially started providing the VI SPDAT, to August 31st of 2022. In that time, 50,774 total VI SPDATs were provided. That actually was 31,964 unduplicated assessments, which were completed for the first time. Of those 31,964, 24,655 were individual adults, or 78% of all those VI SPDATs done were for individuals. 6% of the VI SPDATs done were for transition age youth, or 2,055. And 15% of those VI SPDATs done were for families with children. That's 5,192. 62 of those were justice discharge. Hypotheticals. Based on the information provided, which of these households can access the CES via specialized access point? And which access point? Household A is an 18-year-old fleeing human trafficking. Household B is a 35-year-old and her 40-year-old wife. And household C is a 20-year-old and her 1-year-old child. Based on the information provided, which of these households can access the CES via a specialized access point? And which specialized access points? Based on the information provided, which of these households can access the access points? Household A through Bill Wilson Center, Youth and Young Adults, or Community Solutions, which services survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. Household C through Bill Wilson Center for Youth and Young Adults. Question 2, which household should be screened with the domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking pre-screening tool at access points outside of the Domestic Violence Advocacy Consortium? The answer is all of them should be screened for with the domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking pre-screening tool. And question 3, which VI SPDAT versions should be used when assessing each household? Household A would use the transition age youth VI SPDAT. Household B would use the VI SPDAT for single adults for each household member. And household C would use the VI SPDAT for families. Another core element is prioritization. We use this to identify who will be referred to supportive housing first. We use this in Clarity and HMIS. OSH matchmakers monitor the community queue or households with current VI SPDATs in the PSH or rapid rehousing score range. Once a person experiencing a housing crisis has been assessed, the CES moves on to determining their priority for housing and supportive services. The person's level of vulnerability or need is determined by analyzing the information obtained from the assessment against the COC's prioritization standards. It is a person's prioritization status and other information about the assessment that determines where the person will be referred in the next CES step. In referral, the group of persons with the highest priority is offered housing and supportive service projects first. Household added to the community queue. In the data we showed before from November 15, 2015 to August 31st, 2022, there was a total of 31,964 total unduplicated assessments by level of housing intervention. When their assessment score was an 8+ for individuals or 9+ for families with children, they would be in the permanent supportive housing range. And in this case, that was 38% of those 31,964 assessments were in that range, or 12,145 of them. 47% were in the rapid rehousing range, which is a score of 4 to 7 for individuals or 4 to 8 for families and children. That's 15,132 of those assessments were in the rapid rehousing range. 15% of them were in the minimal intervention range, or 4,687 assessments. Those are with a score of 0 to 3 for all assessment types. Permanent supportive housing prioritization criteria. The first criteria for permanent supportive housing is the VI-SPDAT score. Households who have been on the street, in emergency shelter, and are places not meant for human habitation for at least a year with the highest score will be referred first. The second prioritization criteria is length of time homeless. Among those with the same VI-SPDAT score, households who have been homeless with the longest will be referred first. And the second tiebreaker for prioritization criteria is high use of services. Among those with the same VI-SPDAT score and the same length of time homeless, households will be prioritized based on the level of utilization of county services, with those with the highest utilization referred first. For rapid rehousing and transitional housing prioritization criteria, the first piece of the criteria is the VI-SPDAT score. Households with the highest score within the rapid rehousing range will be referred first. The first tiebreaker for prioritization is the risk score. Among those with the same VI-SPDAT score, households with the highest risk subscore on the VI-SPDAT will be referred first. The second tiebreaker for prioritization will be the length of time on the community queue. Among those with the same VI-SPDAT score and the same risk scores, households will be referred in the order they completed the assessment. The next core element is supportive housing referral. Housing program notifies the matchmaker of a vacancy in the program. The matchmaker refers households to housing program from the community queue or confidential queue based on probable eligibility and prioritization criteria. Then the referral is accepted or denied. A program may deny the referral. There's a limited list of allowable reasons for denial. A referral household may decline the referral. If the referral is accepted by program and household, then household is enrolled into the referred program. From referral to program enrollment. Referrals to permanent supportive housing. One, OSH client engagement team locates households toward the top of the PSH queue and prepares program eligibility documentation. Two, matchmaker notifies the CET of referral to PSH program. Number three, CET connects referred household to PSH program. And for referrals to rapid rehousing and transitional housing, housing program locates referred households in most cases. From November 15, 2015 to August 31st, 2022, there was 3,651 referrals to the permanent supportive housing programs to date, and 8,302 referrals to rapid rehousing programs to date. Locating referred households. We have a standard location practices for community queue referrals, and there's a link for you to review those details. Number one, we use Clarity for in HMIS, the information in Clarity. Number two, we use the link with other outreach teams. Number 3, we visit homeless hotspots. Number 4, make use of community contact. And number 5, make use of online correctional system resources. And number 6, work with your OSH matchmaker to locate referred households. Let's talk about the stakeholder roles and responsibilities of the providers, CES lead agency, the COC, and participants. The provider's role. Access points engage people experiencing homelessness. Access points complete releases of information and conduct assessments. Access points provide housing problem-solving services. All participating providers share information about the CES clients in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. All participants providers maintain participant contact and location information up to date in HMIS. Participating supportive housing providers locate referred households and document program eligibility. Common questions from clients. We provide a CES frequently asked questions to answer these questions and others. Questions like, I completed the coordinated entry survey, the VI-SPDAT. What do I do next? Where am I on the coordinated entry housing wait list? Will coordinated entry match me to housing? When will I get housed? How come my friend got housed before me? If I report honestly about my past, criminal, credit, substance abuse, or mental health history, will that hurt my chances for a housing opportunity through the community queue? What happens if I'm not a citizen? Will my information be kept confidential? In order to get housing, will I need to attend multiple appointments that will cause me to miss other appointments or time on my job? You can see answers to these frequently asked questions on the provided sheet at the link provided. The role of the CES lead agency, or Office of Supportive Housing, shares information about the CES and supportive housing system programs and services with providers and broader community, manages the community queue and makes referrals, trains participating providers, and monitors the CES performance. The role of the COC, develops policies and procedures, holds CES workgroup meetings, monitors CES performance, conducts annual system evaluation and implements resulting recommendations, develops and implements strategies to further CES equity. The CES workgroup informs system design and policy development, monitor CES performance through data, discuss implementing needs and best practices, and contribute to annual CES evaluation. And also, finally, the role of the participants. To notify providers regarding changes in contact or location information, update providers with significant life changes, and continue to pursue housing opportunities outside the CES. Here's some of the key takeaways. Just see some data we have here of one particular year from August 2021 through July of 2022. Show a graphic showing the number of housing placements in dark blue. And then we have a graph next to it that shows the inflow. And that's broken down into permanent supportive housing score range, rapid rehousing score range, and minimal intervention score range. The CES places an average of 161 households in permanent housing every month. The COC is housing people through CES every day. An average of 264 households take the VI-SPDAT assessment for the first time every month. The demand for housing assistance outpaces the supply, So it is crucial that persons awaiting referral continue pursuing other housing opportunity assistance. The COC is continuing to increase the number of supportive housing opportunities available through the CES. Thank you for joining our training today. You will now complete a short quiz.